And we've both spent years. I mean, I've not spent as long as they have, to be honest. I'm just 3+ years. But we spent years talking about newcomers, immigrants, telling their stories, and all trying to answer one big question, which is Canada still worth it?
Ooh, it's heavy. It's a big one. Yeah, absolutely.
But I should say this. This is not is Canada broken? Because I mean, if you look across the headlines, the ton of people who start this Canada is broken. And this is not is Canada broken? I mean, it's more of, is Canada still worth it? Hey everyone, welcome back to the Newcomers podcast, where I explore what it means to be an immigrant to immigrants like myself. Very excited. I say this a lot, but I'm very excited about this because this is the very first episode, maybe not really an episode, but almost like an introduction to my brand new podcast collaboration with Canadian Immigrant. I mean, they're the ones who have the Canadian Immigrant magazine. They also run the top 25 immigrant awards in Canada. Amazing stuff. And so I have with me, my name is Dozie as always, but I have with me Baisakhi Roy. Did I pronounce your name properly? I feel like the I is this Bai or Ba?
Uh, I've had all kinds of versions of my name. That was by far one of the closest. I tell people to sort of break my name down into three parts because
Okay.
it's a huge name. It's Baisakhi. And you were perfect when you said that.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yeah.
let's go. So I have with me Baisakhi Roy, who's the editor of Canadian Immigrant magazine. Amazing lady. Very excited to do this with you. And I'm really excited about this because even though our platforms are different, I feel like we're doing the same thing. And we've both spent years. I mean, I've not spent as long as they have, to be honest. I'm just 3+ years. But we spent years talking about newcomers, immigrants, telling their stories, and all trying to answer one big question, which is Canada still worth it?
Ooh, it's heavy. It's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Canada still worth it. But I mean, when you think about all that's happening right now across Canada, across the world, I think that's a question everyone is asking in one way or the other. I mean, those who are here, which is why we're seeing stuff like the Leaky Bucket Report, where people come here, stay 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, and decide to leave. Again, also, there's also the part, I should say this. This is not is Canada broken? Because I mean, if you look across the headlines, the ton of people who start this Canada is broken. And this is not is Canada broken? I mean, it's more of, is Canada still worth it? And the goal is, can we have that conversation and understand or help people who are considering either to come here or whether to leave, whether they can stay. But again, Basaki, welcome. Tell me,
Yeah,
why
I
are we
mean,
doing all this?
well, yeah, I think when you started, you framed it perfectly. We've been talking about the same things, the Newcomers podcast as well as Canadian Immigrant. I think people deserve a lot more than just hot takes, in this world of TikToks and where people get their news from reels and from, just headlines. And it is at a time where it is so difficult to sort of sift through what is genuine news, what is good analysis. I think people deserve a bit more than that. And I think, as you rightly said, at Canadian Immigrant, we've been telling newcomer stories for over 2 decades now. I think we launched in about April 2004, so way before I immigrated to Canada, 2010. So, and every week, we on a daily basis almost speak to newcomers, to people in the settlement sector, people in, entrepreneurs who are all immigrants, experts in this field. And what we've realized is that reality is much more nuanced, as you have, right? Because you interact with so many people, not only who are newcomers, but also experts in the field, who who give us their expertise, which is much more nuanced than just what's out there. So And as you rightly said, I think from the time I immigrated, or even before that, Canada has changed, right? The immigration system has changed, the job market has changed, and I'm hoping that this is what this podcast is all about, and we are hoping to give some nuanced sort of perspective to people who tune in. Yeah.
Awesome. One thing I do feel like I could have done a better job just kind of talking a bit about what Canadian immigrant is, because I mean,
Mm.
2 decades is a ton. So for me, so that next time I do a better job, and for others who are listening, like tell us a bit about Canadian immigrant, because I mean, you've done a ton of really interesting things, but like, what is it? And what has it been so far since you started working there?
Uh, well, like I said, it was launched in 2004 by an immigrant himself on the West Coast, and there was very little information at that time, I think, tailored specifically to newcomers arriving in Canada. And so the goal was simple, I think. It began as a very simple log line, really, that help immigrants settle more easily and feel more connected in Canada, which is their new home. So and as we sort of started working and doing our research, we discovered something important that still holds true, though Canada has changed. Like, regardless of where immigrants come from, their questions, challenges, they all remain similar. We have a ton of career fairs throughout the year, and every time I meet a newcomer, whether he or she is 1 week old in Canada or a year old in Canada, the main concern is, how do I build a successful life in Canada? How do I find meaningful employment? How do I understand workplace culture? So these are things that I've been hearing for the past, at least for the past 15 years that I've been with the brand. So and we also realize the one aspect of Canadian immigrant which is sort of distinctive is that it's not just information. I mean, IRCC is there for that. But putting things into perspective, right? I mean, uh, our main source of information comes from lived experience, which you are so privy to because you literally speak to people about their lived experience in Canada, because we all need inspiration. We all need people to tell us with their first-hand experience of Canada about how they've made it. So that kind of becomes our blueprint for success for newcomers who are coming now. Um, so seeing the stories of other immigrants who have successfully navigated this journey, this that can be as valuable as practical advice. So that's what we figured out at Canadian Immigrant, that we need to provide information, yes, but also inspiration, also like a proper path to success in Canada. But again, we live in an age, a lot has changed in the last decade. There's tons of information, I think over information. Canada's immigration policies are evolving. Job market is competitive. So Canadian Immigrant, I think, has had to evolve alongside these changing realities, right? So we started off as just a magazine from the basement. A newcomer in Vancouver started it from the basement of his apartment because he thought there's not much information out there. So it started with a magazine and then grew into sort of a multimedia platform. So the website came along, and then we had our career fairs, the top 25 awards program. Then we grew into webinars. We did community initiatives. We had a Women of Inspiration Award for newcomer women. So the mission is similar to when it was in 2004, to help newcomers succeed, but not just by providing information, sharing stories, creating opportunities. And I think in many ways that's exactly what you're doing with the newcomers, Dozie. I think it creating a platform that helps immigrants feel seen, feel heard. It's funny. I have a very distinct memory of you. I remember listening to an episode of your podcast a couple of years ago. And I think on YouTube, because it's my algorithm, I look for newcomer news and newcomer updates. And that's, I think I saw you and heard you in action. And you were speaking to someone, very distinctly remember, because I said something in my mind and you literally said it the next moment. You were speaking with someone called Sebastian Cuervo, who moved to Canada from Colombia. And I remember when you said his name, that Cuervo is in the tequila, and the very next moment, as if in sync, if you go back to that episode, you'll see you said, "Is it Cuervo as in tequila?" And I just burst out laughing. So, and so I have a very distinct memory of that because of the way you started the podcast at that episode, really, where there was this little background music and you were talking about, I think, shutting out the noise, why people move for different reasons from their countries. We always think, oh, it's this, there must be a big political upheaval or a huge economic reason for people to move. But sometimes what you were talking about with Sebastian in that episode is just wanting a little more peace of mind, and that makes you want to immigrate, as simple as that. And people laugh at me when I say that, oh, I there's one thing in Canada that I do not miss in India, is the pure air outside. Not so much in the past 48 hours, but it's clean air. And that might not be an issue for a lot of people, but I know I have friends in India who have had newborns born, who are suffering from asthma. So it could be to cut a long story short, that is that episode, I think, kind of resonated with me. And I sort of, obviously, here and there I would catch some of your episodes. So I like the way you did that. You of course had this very therapeutic quality of voice and tone, and this very infectious laughter. Obviously, I was drawn in. And no wonder then, right, that your podcast has grown remarkably quickly, and it seems to be resonating with so many people. So I wanted to ask you, how did the Newcomers come to be? What was the story behind it, and what did you hope to sort of create when you launched it?
So first of all, so just random, like someone said to me, I was at this event, a entrepreneur event, a couple of days ago, and someone said, Dozie, you need your wife to interview you to ask so you can answer these questions. You've been interviewing people, so you need your wife to sit there and interview you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to think about doing that. Honestly, because when I started this, I did not see all this that's happening today. It was just me trying to find myself, to be honest. I moved here from Nigeria. I landed in Canada February 4th, 2021. I always get confused when people ask me, because in my head, I'm like, I left Nigeria. You say, when did you leave? I'm like, I left Nigeria in January, because to me, I don't count that the first and second that I was in Nigeria as being in Nigeria in February. So I landed on February 4th, and within a couple of weeks, it was so obvious that I had taken on something I didn't fully understand. Like, I basically didn't know who I was anymore. My 4-year-old then, it didn't seem that way. He was having fun. When we landed, the weather was minus 20 degrees. My body was confused. Like, it was confused because it's just like, yo, we left Nigeria. It was like 30 plus degrees. So I had done a minus 50 degree move temperature wise. So like, I was confused. Every single thing was new to me, So at some point in time, I started asking myself, I need to speak to other people who've done this just to kind of understand whether what was happening to me was normal. Because I felt really out of place. And that was how the first thing, this wasn't going to be a podcast. This was going to be a Google form that I was going to send to people and tell them to tell me their first week, was their first job, their first house, their first friends. Just tell me what your first was like so that I would understand it.
Correct.
And then somewhere along the way, I forget right now, but I think along the way, they're talking to a friend. So I was like, you could just interview these people and ask them the question. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I could interview. Maybe it could be a podcast. And so, as with everything, you need what I call escape velocity. So it took me 2 years to finally decide to interview someone. So I had this conversation in 2021. I recorded the first episode 2023 March, I believe, with my friend Dapo, very good friend of mine. He was the first day test recording looked at it like, oh, okay, we can do
I
this.
can
And then
do
without
this.
it, we'll record it. you
Nice.
know, and so when I launched it, it was just like, you know what? I'll just start talking to people and just kind of share with others. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm learning. But as with everything that you do and you love doing it, it just kind of snowballed into something else. And when people ask me where I'm going with this, I don't know, honestly. I think the only thing really, I think if you ask me the big thing I really want to do is I'm really hoping that I can make sense of what it means to immigrate. That's one for people.
Yeah.
Um, but most importantly, especially for a country like Canada, where immigration is such a huge part of our conversation of who we are, our identity, and a lot of things, is really understand immigration both from a emotional, physical, financial, blah 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 point of view, and then in the end, hopefully allow us to build policies that improve our immigration outcomes. Because I do think that one thing we're very good at as a country is we're very good at counting the number of people that come in. We're not very good at counting the people that integrate or belong. Like, so it just feels like people just come in and then it just ends. Like it just ends. And then all we're talking about is it now becomes an economic conversation or a utilitarian conversation. Like it just kind of, I feel like we need to do better at that because, or else every now and then we'll get into the kind of problems we had some months, which I think we're still struggling from, where immigrants suddenly become the problem behind every single thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But enough about me. Why are we collaborating?
Well, exactly what you said. I feel like I think I'm so happy that our sort of mission and our vision obviously overlaps. And I loved that you said, and I don't think I've heard it before, that we just sort of look at immigrants as this utilitarian, this number. It's always data, right? So 2026 to 2020, this is the target, this for immigrants, this is how many there's so much data and numbers, but what happens 1 week into Canada, right? 1 month into Canada, 1 year into Canada? These are people's lives we are talking about. So I love that, and that is why I think we're collaborating. I love that our audiences overlap, and I love that we bring different strengths. I think newcomers as well as Canadian immigrant. We always approach immigration through journalism, through sort of reportage, and you approach it through conversations, lived experiences. But you do, I mean, it's some of your work. It puts is journalism, right? It is true blue journalism, and we have conversations. So as well. So I feel our styles sort of amalgamate. I think it's the perfect sort of amalgamation. Would that be like an accurate assessment? I think we both bring that unique sort of. I feel like your influence in the community and our influence as a as a body in the newcomer community. I think it's a great sort of marrying of minds, where we can sort of look at an issue beyond the numbers, actually get some people on board who know what they're talking about, who are experts in their field, and hopefully get some answers and get some, perspective into where we are heading, in terms of immigration, in terms of the newcomer experience. Yeah. So I'm hoping that's what's going to come out of this
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
do
Yeah.
agree, actually. I totally agree. I think we're so, like, because in the end, really, we're all trying to answer the same question. Like, maybe they're probably different parts or different adjustments here and there because of models and structure and individuals and stuff. But I think we're all just trying to answer the same question because none of us have the answers. Some of it is not in our control. Some of it is in our control. And which is why I'm excited about this, actually, because, as you say, is even though it's different, it's still the same thing. And the big part for me is together can we bring folks who know about these things and have a conversation with them about, hey, how do we even ask them questions about this? Because I always say that I believe, which is probably why I love having conversations, is like I believe that questions are open doorways, like, and so that's what questions are really like. So I prefer that I ask questions that I have answers, because if you ask questions, you just you just enter another door, you ask another question, you enter another door, and hopefully along the way, by the time you look back on all the doors you've opened, you've probably built a pathway to solve a lot of the problems, just all because you're asking questions,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of rolling on, because I feel like we've been talking about ourselves. I mean, we're going to talk about the theme. Like, yeah, I mean, folks, like the theme of season one. Season one, yes, because hopefully there'll be season two.
There'll be more seasons, hopefully. Yes, we're just putting it out there.
Yeah. And I think this is a really big one, honestly, is like, again, back to the question I said it when we started this time, is Canada still worth it? And maybe I should
Exactly.
ask you this, like, why do you think this is a good question to talk about right now?
I think there's been so much upheaval in the past year, with so many sort of immigration numbers, again, numbers, immigration policies just being, turned over their head. There's been so much debate about kind of newcomers that Canada should be welcoming, which I find very fascinating as a topic. Like, who are the kind of people we need in Canada, which is so loaded. It's probably the number one conversation that's happening among newcomers today. I get questions all the time from people who want to move to Canada asking me, it used to be, how do I immigrate? What is the best way to immigrate? Is it the PNP program? Is it the express entry? Should I apply through? Should I come to study in Canada? Because, studying in Canada might open more doors. But now there's been a shift. They are questioning the very existence of the very concept of Canada being their dream destination. It used to be the American dream at one point in time. Then there used to be the Canadian dream. I remember when I came in, I used to hear a lot about that. But now people have options. People are looking for options. People are debating whether to even immigrate. So it's a very different conversation, and I don't think there's a simple yes or no anymore. I don't know how much you agree, and I'm sure a bit of what I'm going to say probably holds true for you as well. But it's still a country of tremendous opportunity for a lot of people. But the path to building a successful life, right in the beginning, when I said that, oh, the premise of Canadian Immigrant was to answer this, question that immigrants have: how do I build a successful life? But that has kind of evolved, that question, because immigrating now is much more complex. We saw, there's an affordability crisis, housing, the job market is competitive, there are gaps in policy making, which kind of, sort of disrupts the best laid plans that newcomers have been making, right, to come to Canada. So all that's been thrown up in the air. But at the same time, you see success stories. We post about success stories on the Newcomers pod and on Canadian Immigrant on a daily basis with amazing regularity. Like, people who've come here. I know I caught a recent episode who sort of survived war and came to Canada, someone you featured on the Newcomers pod, and is building a life here. Right, we just featured a couple from Jamaica who have had tremendous success in the skilled trades, and now as a couple, they went back to York University at their age. They're 40 plus, and they sort of did their PhDs, and they're giving, so there are all kinds of success stories. And so people are building incredible lives in Canada. I think the key is to have sort of realistic expectations, good information, honest conversations, which I hope that, this podcast by the Newcomers and Canadian Immigrant will hopefully explore in depth. So that's why I'm excited, really. So bringing together experts, policymakers, employers, obviously immigrant voices. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, to answer this big question that, is Canada still worth it? Yeah.
Yeah,
What do
yeah. I
you
mean,
think?
the key word for me there is the nuance. Like, it's the
Yeah.
nuance, because I won't call the person's name. So someone reached out to me a couple of days ago. I think someone sent him my way. Hey, talk to Dozie about, he's building a product for newcomers, and so we got
Mm,
talking. And he was asking me questions. When he asked me questions, I was like, this is a great question, but there's
mm,
no yes or no answer here,
correct.
because there's just a ton of things. And the thing about the immigration journey is it's the human journey.
Yeah.
That's how I like to see it. And if you think about the human journey and think that you have simple answers for everything, then you're not serious about it.
Yeah.
There are no simple answers. And which is why I like to say I like to tell stories, because I believe that stories are like capsules for the human brain. And everybody's story is different. So if Baisakhi tells me her story today, I'll probably see one thing in there that I love, and I'll take that and I'll go with it. Someone else will listen to it and be like, "Oh, I love the way she tried to set it kind of that suits me perfectly," because we're all different, and that's why for me this is important. It's like, can we capture all that nuance and hopefully turn that into frameworks or approaches that allow people to make decisions about their future in Canada. Allow people to say,
Correct.
you know what, I think this country is the place to come to. Because I love this country a ton. I do think it's an amazing place. I do think it still has a lot of potential. It has its kinks here and there.
Oh
No
yeah.
place is perfect,
No.
but it is an amazing place to be, especially because it is. I mean, I remember what someone said to me. Someone said, this is the first place I felt, this is one of the first places I felt at home.
Oh, that's saying a lot. If you
Yeah,
believe in
you
that,
know,
yeah, yeah,
So if you think, and that's Canada, really, it's in all of its flaws and all things we want to complain about. It's a beautiful place that if you want to make it home. So again, it's because there's no yes and no answer. It's just the nuance.
yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so
So
that's
hopefully, like over the next few episodes, and we are hoping to get about 5 episodes out to
yeah,
tackle some
yeah,
of
that's true. Five,
these
hopefully.
questions. Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think we'll start off with?
I think the first one will be: should you still immigrate to Canada in 2026 and maybe 2027? Like, should you still immigrate to Canada in the next 18 months?
Yeah,
You
is
know?
it a good choice still for you? Then we were talking about one about the express entry pool. I think there's been an update as we are
Yeah.
recording about the
Always
express
changes.
entry. Always changes, which we spoke about, and I loved that we were thinking of talking. If you don't have a job offer, if you've not studied here, you don't have a Canadian degree, do you still have options? So
Yeah.
that is one topic we are hoping to yeah, sift through and
Yeah.
unpack for our listeners for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's also like the In Canada Workers Initiative. Like, who's it for? Who benefits, who doesn't. Because I feel like there's just, I don't know if it's a policy thing, but you know how policymakers just throw stuff out and then leave you
Exactly.
all to kind of figure it out over time?
With all these fancy names, with
Yeah,
official sounding
exactly.
names. Yeah, yeah,
That, yeah.
exactly. And then immigration fraud is another,
Oh gosh.
and
Oh gosh.
I always, it has kind of ramped up in the past few years. It has come into the news with much more regularity than the previous years. So maybe like a really hard look at immigration fraud. This is becoming a real problem. How do you speak? How do you spot fake consultants? And what do you do if you've already been scammed? It also at this day and age with so much information, I don't blame people from being being vulnerable to these scams, but it always does kind of bring me back to reality that yes, people still scam other people. It's
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
not a lot of information on how to actually handle this, and so yeah, hopefully one solid episode on that. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I'm so tempted to talk about to handle that thing philosophically, because I do feel like, you're right to point out, like, things like the core of it is when you point out about, when you think about all that's happening in the system, you can understand why people are being scammed. So it's easy to say,
yeah,
why are people not being scammed? But there are things that drive those kind of behaviors, and it's on policymakers and the government to decide to build an environment that restricts that kind of behavior. But yeah, people are still being scammed a ton.
yeah,
Um, then I think finally what we have is, and I think that's one of the biggest conversations today, honestly,
yeah.
which is, do we still have an international student pathway in Canada?
I mean, it is mind-boggling to me. I mean, there are so many stories, and it just breaks my heart when I see young people with potential who are so gung-ho about their future here, and to see their dreams sort of just shatter because it's just bad. There's so many factors to it, but yeah, this is something that's been on my mind for a while now, especially post COVID. Last year there were a ton of programs for international students, and ton of college and university programs that had to shut down because of low enrollment. And I mean, it was a yeah, quite a spectacle. So I think it deserves a more thorough sort of
Yeah.
investigation to see. what really went wrong, right? And yeah, if this is still a viable path to Canada, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's good to kind of just mention that I think we both do agree that, was it handled poorly? Yeah, I think so. I think at some point we probably just brought in too many people. And I don't mean that in a way, oh, don't bring in too many immigrants. It's almost like, hey, did we set up our student pathway for success, basically?
Exactly.
You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's good to call that out. And then the question is, what did we now do in reacting to that, and how did we handle that, and what are the effects of how we handle that?
Yeah. And should you still sort of explore Canada as a
Yep.
destination for further studies? Is it a viable path too? But yeah, it all sounds very serious. We do not intend this to be a doom and gloom podcast, for sure. It can't be one with your personality and your
I hope so. I hope so.
But we're not also obviously going to pretend that everything is perfect, and we are interested, like I think we both are on the same page about this. We need to get people talking more about this, and we need to get people who know their stuff, experts, get the real stories, get different perspectives. So we hope that we get as many voices into this conversation. We also hope to involve our listeners, sort of open it up to people, send us their concerns, send us their questions, what they've been struggling with. So yeah, I hope people will listen, tune in and interact with us and tell us what's on their mind.
Yeah, I mean, because chances are, if you're thinking about any of these things here, there are thousands of other folks out there who are thinking about it. So please send in those questions. Like, leave comments. Tell us what you want us to ask the expert on any of these topics. We'll probably announce the topic before it goes live. We haven't yet finished working out the modalities of how that'll happen, but you'll know when a topic's we're about to record a topic, so that you can send in your questions, and then we can treat that and literally ask someone like, hey, XYZ said this. How do we treat that? But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, this is us wrapping up then, episode number 1, I guess. It's been a delight, but yes, hopefully watch the space. I've always wanted to say, watch the space. Because Dozie and I will be back with our season 1, episodes of season 1, hopefully soon. Yeah.
And again, as always, please, folks, subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Beehive, Canadian Immigrant website. Just subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode, where we tackle the next big question, which is, should you immigrate to Canada in 2026 or in the next 18 months? See you then.
See you then.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.